Fear is the silent killer of greatness. It doesn't attack loudly, it seeps quietly into your thoughts and paralyzes your actions. It makes you imagine failure before you even begin. Every time you hesitate, every time you hold back, fear wins and your potential dies a little more. You were not born to live small, you were born to explore, to expand, to express. But fear builds invisible walls around your mind, convincing you that safety is better than growth and comfort is better than challenge. Fear is the silent destroyer of potential. It does not attack with noise or chaos, but with quiet control that eats away at your courage. It blinds you from seeing what you can become and convinces you to stay where you are. When fear takes over, your mind becomes a cage. You stop trying, you stop dreaming, and you start believing that your limits are permanent. The truth is, fear does not protect you, it only delays your growth and buries your possibilities under hesitation. Fear manipulates your imagination. It shows you endless pictures of failure and loss, creating a story that never existed. You start believing in outcomes that haven't even happened, and those beliefs slowly control your choices. Every great idea dies the moment fear whispers, "What if it doesn't work?" That single thought has killed more dreams than failure ever could. Fear teaches you to run from challenges, but those challenges are the very moments that shape your power. Fear kills creativity and dulls the mind. When you are scared, your focus shifts from creation to survival. You stop exploring and begin protecting yourself from imagined dangers. Your potential dies not because you lack skill, but because your mind is trapped in the habit of avoiding risks. Every time you let fear win, you strengthen its grip and soon it becomes your identity. A person living in fear can never discover the beauty of what lies beyond their comfort zone. Fear also feeds on comfort. The more you avoid discomfort, the stronger fear becomes. You trade growth for temporary safety and call it stability. But the longer you live this way, the smaller your world becomes. Comfort slowly kills ambition and fear becomes your quiet master. You cannot see new horizons if you refuse to step beyond what feels safe. The cost of that safety is your unrealized potential. The only way to destroy fear is to face it with awareness. When you see fear clearly, its power fades. It can only control you when you try to escape it. Every time you confront what scares you, your strength multiplies and your world expands. Fear is not an enemy to fight, but a shadow to walk through. Once you stop obeying it, you unlock the full force of your potential and begin to live as the person you were always meant to be. Fear creates hesitation that slowly poisons every part of human strength. It enters the mind as a whisper of doubt and grows into a storm that shakes your confidence. The moment fear touches your thoughts, your steps begin to slow and your vision starts to blur. You begin to question your own ability, your own worth, and even your reason for trying. Fear convinces you that failure is waiting for you, even before you take your first step. This hesitation becomes a wall that separates you from your goals. You start to analyze every risk, calculate every outcome, and in that endless thinking, you lose the courage to move. The mind that once carried clarity becomes filled with uncertainty and action turns into endless waiting. Fear keeps you trapped in a loop of what-ifs, and before you realize it, the opportunity you once had has already passed you by. The hesitation caused by fear does not just delay your progress, it weakens your inner fire. It drains your energy and makes you believe that inaction is safer than trying. You begin to accept smallness as your identity, convincing yourself that comfort is peace, when in truth it is just fear wearing a calm face. Every second you hesitate, your dreams fade a little more and your confidence becomes a distant memory. The danger of fear-driven hesitation is that it teaches you to live half a life. You stop pursuing what you love, you stop exploring what you are capable of, and you start protecting yourself from imaginary pain. Fear whispers safety, but it silently steals your spirit. You start existing instead of living, breathing but not becoming. Nothing kills the human spirit faster than hesitation born out of fear. To destroy this hesitation, one must act in spite of fear. Action is the only weapon strong enough to silence the mind's doubts. Once you take a single bold step, the illusion of fear begins to crumble. The strength you search for appears only when you move forward, not when you wait. Fear may still exist, but it loses control the moment you refuse to obey it. Fear feeds on imagination and turns it into a weapon against you. It uses your own mind to create pictures of failure, rejection, and loss. The more you think about what can go wrong, the more powerless you feel to take a step forward. It traps you inside a story that does not exist, making you fight battles that are not even real. Fear doesn't destroy you with truth, it destroys you with illusion. It makes you believe that danger is everywhere even when the path ahead is clear. When imagination is controlled by fear, it no longer serves creativity. It becomes a mirror that reflects only weakness and doubt. Every idea you have is questioned, every dream you hold is shadowed by worry. You begin to imagine disasters before you even act, and that imagination becomes stronger than your will. The more attention you give to fearful thoughts, the more real they feel. Slowly you start obeying those thoughts as if they were facts. This process eats away at inner strength. The mind that once created vision and ambition now creates excuses and hesitation. Fear makes the smallest risk appear deadly and the smallest failure feel final. It convinces you that safety is wisdom, when in truth it is only submission. Your imagination, which once had the power to build dreams, is now used to build barriers. And those barriers are not made of reality, they are made of your own fearful thoughts. As this illusion grows, your energy begins to fade. You stop moving, stop trying, stop believing. You tell yourself that you are being careful, but in reality, you are being controlled. The imagination that should lift you up now holds you down. Every moment spent imagining failure is a moment stolen from creation. Fear wins when you live more in your thoughts than in your actions. The way to end this cycle is not by destroying imagination, but by reclaiming it. Use it to see what can go right, not what can go wrong. Replace imagined loss with imagined victory. When you redirect your thoughts towards strength, fear loses its foundation. The same imagination that once chained, you can become the force that sets you free. Fear kills creativity because it locks the mind inside boundaries that do not exist. When the thought of failure dominates your focus, every idea becomes a risk and every risk feels like danger. You stop exploring the unknown and your imagination begins to shrink. Fear takes away the courage to experiment and replaces it with the habit of playing safe. A fearful mind does not create, it only repeats what already feels secure, burying the spark that once wanted to innovate. The weight of fear pushes the mind into survival mode. Instead of searching for new ways to grow, you start searching for ways to avoid pain. Every creative thought demands freedom, but fear chains that freedom to worry and hesitation. It makes you question your own ideas, doubt your instincts, and silence your originality before it even takes form. The mind becomes busy protecting itself rather than expressing itself, and in that process, creativity slowly dies. When fear takes control, even the smallest mistake feels like a disaster. You begin to treat every failure as proof of your weakness instead of a path to improvement. This makes you cautious, rigid, and predictable. You stop taking chances because the pain of being wrong seems unbearable. But true creativity is born from trial, from risk, from the willingness to fail and rise again. Without that freedom, talent turns into repetition and passion turns into routine. Fear also poisons confidence. The more you fear judgment, the less you trust your own vision. You start looking for approval before expression, shaping your thoughts to please others instead of expressing truth. Creativity cannot breathe in an atmosphere of fear because it demands authenticity and rebellion. The moment you begin to worry about how your work will be received, you stop creating from the heart and start creating from fear. To restore creativity, fear must be faced and understood. You cannot force inspiration through anxiety, it comes only when the mind is unafraid to fail. The act of creation itself is an act of courage. When you create without the need for perfection, fear begins to fade. The mind regains its power to explore, to invent, and to express without restraint. That is when real creativity returns, raw, fearless and limitless. Fear attracts failure because the energy you focus on becomes the reality you create. When the mind is filled with fear, every action that follows carries that vibration. You begin to act from doubt instead of clarity, from anxiety instead of confidence. Fear clouds your decisions, weakens your choices and drives you straight into the situations you were trying to escape. What you constantly think about, you move toward, and fear makes sure you move toward the very failure you fear the most. Every time fear takes control, it shapes your behavior in ways that create the conditions for defeat. You hesitate when you should act, you delay when you should decide, and you second-guess yourself until opportunity slips away. Fear does not protect you, it sabotages you through inaction and confusion. The more you focus on avoiding mistakes, the more mistakes you make because fear keeps you from thinking clearly and acting boldly. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy built by your own hesitation. Fear changes the energy you send into the world. When your thoughts are negative and defensive, the world responds with resistance. People sense your uncertainty and chances move away from you. Fear closes your body, tightens your breath and limits your expression, turning confidence into weakness. You begin to attract situations that reflect your inner state of fear. The failure was never created outside, it was invited by the energy you carried within. When fear dominates your thoughts, it turns your goals into distant dreams. You stop seeing possibilities and start seeing only danger. The focus on not losing replaces the hunger to win. Every decision becomes cautious, every step smaller until progress completely freezes. In that frozen state, failure becomes inevitable, not because you were incapable, but because you surrendered to the control of fear. Freedom from fear does not come by denying it, but by moving through it. When you act despite fear, the energy shifts, your mind regains its clarity, your confidence returns, and the direction of your energy changes. You stop attracting failure because your focus moves from what you fear to what you desire. The moment you choose courage over fear, everything begins to align toward success instead of loss. Fear weakens inner strength because it eats away at the core of who you are. It begins quietly, whispering uncertainty into the back of your mind until you start to question yourself. The power that once came naturally turns into hesitation. Every step forward feels heavier, every decision feels harder. You stop trusting your instincts and begin to depend on others for validation. Fear replaces self-belief with constant doubt, leaving you unsure even when you are right. Once fear enters the heart, courage begins to fade. It clouds judgment and blurs purpose. You may still move, but not with the same force, not with the same clarity. Fear turns every challenge into a threat and every obstacle into a wall. It makes you forget that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to move through it. You lose the fire that pushes you to fight, and without that fire, even small difficulties start to feel impossible. Fear confuses the mind and disconnects you from your center. You begin to overthink, trying to predict every outcome, and in doing so, you drain your own energy. The mind becomes restless and filled with noise. You can no longer hear the quiet voice of confidence within because fear speaks louder. It distracts you with endless questions. What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you lose everything? These thoughts destroy focus and make you weak long before any real failure happens. The deeper fear grows, the more power it takes from you. It convinces you that playing small is safe, that hiding is wise, and that surrender is peace. But peace built on fear is nothing more than silent defeat. You start accepting limitations as truth and calling weakness humility. You begin to shrink to fit inside the cage fear built for you. The strength that once defined you turns into submission, and soon you forget what true courage even feels like. To reclaim inner strength, fear must be faced directly. It cannot be escaped, ignored, or reasoned with, it must be challenged. When you confront it, its illusion begins to break. The confusion clears and the fire inside reignites. Strength is not something you find outside yourself, it is what remains when fear loses its grip. Once you stop feeding fear with attention, your courage returns, your purpose becomes sharp again, and your spirit stands unshaken. Fear thrives in comfort because comfort weakens the need for growth. When life becomes too easy, the hunger to challenge yourself fades away. You begin to choose what feels safe over what pushes you forward. The more you stay in the same routine, the more unfamiliar things start to feel dangerous. Fear grows quietly in that safety, feeding on your unwillingness to take risks. What once was peace slowly turns into stagnation, and your potential starts to suffocate under the weight of your own comfort. Comfort gives you the illusion of control. It makes you believe that staying where you are will protect you from failure or pain. But in truth, it only builds invisible walls around your possibilities. Every time you refuse to step into discomfort, you strengthen those walls. You start calling it stability, yet it's nothing but fear disguised as wisdom. The mind becomes addicted to ease, forgetting that strength is built only through resistance. Without challenge, even talent begins to decay. Fear grows stronger when you stop testing yourself. You begin to convince yourself that the unfamiliar is too risky, that others can take the chances while you remain safe. But safety without growth becomes its own kind of prison. It traps you in repetition, making every day feel the same. When you stop facing new challenges, fear becomes the ruler of your mind. You stop evolving and start surviving, existing in a loop where nothing changes and nothing improves. Discomfort is not the enemy, it is the forge where character is shaped. The pain you feel when you step outside your comfort zone is not punishment, it is transformation. It teaches resilience, patience, and courage. Each moment of struggle hardens your spirit and builds inner confidence. But when you run from discomfort, you run from your own power. Fear takes over that space, whispering that you are not ready, that you might fail until you start believing it. To destroy the control of fear, you must step willingly into discomfort. You must embrace challenge, chaos and uncertainty as the true path to strength. Growth never happens where things feel easy. It happens when you are forced to rise above what you think you can handle. Comfort keeps you asleep, but discomfort wakes you up to your potential. When you stop choosing what is easy and start choosing what is necessary, fear loses its grip and life begins to expand beyond boundaries. Fear disconnects you from your true self because it forces you to live a life that is not your own. It makes you question your instincts, your voice, and your direction until you begin to follow what others expect instead of what you truly want. The more you listen to fear, the further you move from your natural rhythm. You start wearing masks to please the world, hiding behind roles that make you feel safe but empty. Fear does not just limit what you do, it reshapes who you are. When you let fear control you, your choices stop coming from inner clarity and start coming from external pressure. You begin to seek approval, constantly looking around to see if others will accept your decisions. Every step you take is weighed by the fear of rejection or failure. This constant need for validation kills authenticity. The voice inside that once guided you becomes silent because fear has convinced you that it cannot be trusted. You become a reflection of what others want, not the expression of what you are. Fear manipulates your emotions and clouds your awareness. It makes you doubt your own intuition even when it speaks clearly. You start ignoring the signs your heart gives, replacing truth with logic built on insecurity. The connection between mind and soul becomes weak. You may look successful on the outside, but inside there is conflict because you know you are living against your own essence. Fear builds that distance and keeps it alive by making you believe that being yourself is dangerous. As this separation deepens, your energy becomes divided. Half of you tries to fit into expectations while the other half quietly resists. You lose balance and this internal war drains your strength. Every decision feels heavy because it is not aligned with truth. You begin to feel lost. Not because you lack direction, but because you are walking someone else's path. Fear blinds you from the simplicity of being yourself and replaces it with endless performance for others. Freedom from this disconnection begins when you stop obeying fear's voice and return to your own. When you listen to intuition without hesitation, you reconnect with clarity and power. The real strength lies in living truthfully even when it feels uncertain. Fear may still whisper, but it can no longer dictate. When you return to your authentic self, peace follows naturally because you are no longer fighting to be someone you are not. Fear wastes life's energy because it directs your strength toward defending against things that do not exist. It drains your focus by keeping your mind trapped in endless cycles of worry and doubt. Instead of moving forward, you remain stuck, rehearsing worst-case scenarios that never happen. Every thought of fear consumes energy that could have been used for creation, for progress, for growth. Fear feeds on your attention, and the more you give it, the weaker you become in both mind and spirit. When fear controls you, every decision is made for survival rather than purpose. You stop chasing dreams and start chasing safety. The energy that should be used to build something meaningful is instead used to maintain comfort and avoid pain. The body grows tense, the mind grows tired, and the soul grows restless. You begin to feel exhausted, not because you have worked hard, but because you have fought against invisible battles in your own imagination. Fear turns your potential into wasted motion. It makes you busy but not productive, active but not effective. You overthink, overanalyze, and overprotect yourself from imagined loss. This constant state of alertness burns your inner fuel and leaves you empty. Every hour spent worrying is an hour stolen from creation. You cannot build anything powerful when your energy is scattered between fear of the past and anxiety about the future. The energy of life was never meant to be used for defense against illusions. It was meant to be poured into actions that expand you. Fear traps that energy in a tight circle of self-protection, leaving no room for inspiration or exploration. You start living carefully instead of powerfully. The natural rhythm of action and rest disappears, replaced by a dull tension that never ends. Fear does not just waste energy, it rewires your body and mind to survive instead of thrive. To reclaim that wasted energy, you must confront fear directly and stop feeding it with attention. The moment you stop resisting imaginary dangers, your power returns. Clarity replaces confusion, strength replaces hesitation, and movement replaces stagnation. When the energy that was once trapped in fear flows back into creation, life becomes lighter, sharper, and more alive. The energy you once used to protect yourself now becomes the force that propels you forward. Fear disappears through awareness because awareness exposes its illusion. Fear survives only in darkness, in the hidden corners of the mind where imagination replaces truth. The moment you bring full attention to it, the shape of fear changes. You begin to see that most of what you were running from never actually existed. Awareness tears away the false images that fear builds and reveals that the enemy was never outside. It was always within. When you look at fear without escape, it loses its disguise and begins to dissolve under the light of understanding. Awareness does not fight fear, it observes it. The more you watch it without reaction, the weaker it becomes. Fear feeds on resistance, and every attempt to suppress it only makes it grow stronger. But when you allow it to exist and simply see it as it is, its power fades. You realize that fear is not a solid force, but a movement of thought, a series of imagined possibilities that come and go. Awareness separates you from those thoughts and lets you stand in clarity instead of confusion. Through awareness, you begin to understand the pattern of fear. You notice how it enters through small thoughts, how it builds stories, and how it drives you to act without reason. This understanding gives you control over it. You stop being a victim of automatic reactions and become the watcher of your own mind. Every time you remain present and refuse to follow fear's voice, it loses ground. Awareness gives you the strength to choose action even when fear still whispers in the background. When awareness deepens, fear starts to lose meaning. The events or outcomes that once terrified you no longer carry the same weight. You start to see failure as experience, pain as growth, and uncertainty as opportunity. Fear cannot survive in a mind that sees clearly because clarity exposes its emptiness. The more conscious you become, the less control fear has. Awareness replaces panic with understanding and replaces doubt with calm determination. The destruction of fear happens naturally when awareness becomes your way of living. You no longer fight your thoughts or emotions, you observe them and allow them to pass. Life becomes lighter because you are no longer trapped inside mental battles. The energy once wasted on resistance turns into strength and peace. Awareness does not remove fear from existence, it removes its authority over you. Once that happens, you move through life not as a prisoner of your thoughts, but as a master of your mind.